Right? Two people walk into a room, and they're both presented with the same scientific information and data. And now keep in mind, these are reasonable, rational people. They're both presented with the same scientific data and information, and both of them agree with that information. And yet, they both come to opposite conclusions about whether or not something such as a vaccine mandate should be implemented. How is that possible? Well, that's because statements such as whether or not a vaccine mandate should be implemented are a normative philosophical question, not a scientific question. Any statement that involves the words such as should, ought, good, bad, better, worse, those are normative qualifiers. And science, on the other hand, is an endeavor solely in the realm of determining how the world is. It has nothing to do with finding out how the world should be. So it is completely useless in terms of telling us what is good or what is bad in terms of something as a question on the subject of how the people should be governed and how we should live our own lives. Those are normative philosophical questions, not scientific questions. So, and now, let's go back to the question of reasonable people. Now, let's look at the question of what constitutes, say for instance, harassment at the workplace. And to determine that, the question is the person being, the claims harassment, are they meeting what is known as the reasonable person standard? Now, I'll give you an example of an unreasonable person, somebody that's behaving unreasonably. Say, for instance, I'm at the workplace and someone says, "Hi, Glenn, good morning." And I respond, "How dare you say good morning and hello to me in a friendly tone of voice? I feel harassed." Now, that would be an instance of me not meeting the reasonable person standard. So let's compare that with the current situation of the vaccine mandates and individual employers requiring vaccines regardless of any government mandate. Now, supposing now there's an employee says, "I feel harassed because you're requiring me to get penetrated by Big Pharma's needle, and I'm very extremely uncomfortable with getting penetrated by the Big Pharma's needle and injected with the COVID vaccine." Now, I believe that is someone that is meeting the reasonable person standard, and they are being harassed by their employer. Now, of course, there's no science does also has no way of determining what constitutes a reasonable person and an unreasonable person in terms of determining that standard. What is a reasonable person and who is not being reasonable in responding to any in terms of allegations about being harassed. But now, however, I think pretty much everybody would say for instance, an instance of, say, a boss that says, "Yeah, tells the secretary, yeah, I want to have sex with you, but you're of course free not to sleep with me, but you're going to be fired if you don't." Then if the secretary then says, "Well, that's harassment," everybody would agree that that secretary is being reasonable, is meeting the reasonable person standard. Now, why? Now, isn't the same principle involved here, involving being penetrated by the COVID vaccine needle? I think that all forms of penetration, whether it be medical or sexual, should be done uncoerced. But, however, a mandate or requirement that that's conditional on you maintaining your employment, you have to accept the penetration or you're fired. That is clearly meets the definition of coercion. I mean, I've looked it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. It's definitely, it falls under that definition of coercion, and they both in the cases of that secretary in that scenario, not wanting to get penetrated by her boss, and the employee that does not want to get penetrated by Big Pharma's needle. It's in both cases it involves invasiveness to one's body, and that I think that there's no doubt that in both cases this person is meeting the reasonable person standard in saying that this is harassment. I don't have to take it. This is wrong.